This is a course for parents on getting over the anxiety hump for your kid. I'm Jared, someone who has specialized in this field over the last decade, spending thousands of hours listening to families and working with various mental, performance, and emotional challenges. I'm going to cover what you need from someone who sees kids, teens, and college students work through their fear and anxiety each day. Anxiety is a treatable condition. Not all anxiety is bad. Our goal is not to get rid of all anxiety for our kids. We actually need anxiety to function in life. It's time to rethink the problem at hand. Anxiety is a feeling of fear, worry, and unease that can range from mild to severe. It's a normal emotion that everyone experiences from time to time. However, when anxiety becomes so severe that it interferes with daily life, it can be classified as an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental health disorder in the United States, affecting millions of adults and kids each day. Anxiety can be caused by a variety of factors, including genetics, brain chemistry, personality, and life events. It can be triggered by stress, such as work or school pressures. It can manifest itself in physical symptoms, such as increased heart rate, sweating, and trembling. It can also cause emotional symptoms such as fear, worry, and panic. Anxiety is a normal emotion that everyone experiences from time to time. However, when it becomes so severe that it interferes with daily life, it can be classified as an anxiety disorder. Understanding the causes and symptoms of anxiety can help people manage their anxiety and seek treatment if necessary. Let's look at two different ways of thinking about anxiety: eustress and distress. Eustress is the anxiety that keeps the world moving. It gets us up in the morning, gets us to go to school and work, make sure we are continuing to move forward in life in a positive direction. It gets us out the door. Without this anxiety, no one would do anything. We would cease any motivation, any direction. We need eustress in our lives. But distress is anxiety that stops kids from meeting their purpose, their potential in life. It's anxiety that is obstacle forming, habit reinforcing. The goal is to work and manage distress. It stops capable people of doing things that are possible and developmentally appropriate for them to do. By the end of this mini course, we will have a game plan on tackling this challenge with anxiety. I do not want to make false promises. This isn't a magic bullet course. What I mean is this: managing this is hard work, exhausting, and full of ups and downs. This course is educational in nature. What we're going to find in this course is a place to build our tool set. Let's look at resetting our mindset to get to a place where there are practical solutions that work for your kid over time. I find that the more you can understand, the more confidence you can develop as a parent in tackling this beast. Anxiety is a normal emotion that everyone experiences from time to time. It can range from mild to severe and can be a source of distress. In this lesson, we're going to explore the different types of anxiety and how it can impact our lives. There are several types of anxiety that can affect people. This is a very brief overview of different anxiety disorders. Generalized anxiety is characterized by excessive and persistent worry about everyday life. Sometimes there can be no discernible triggers for these worries, but it leads to a lot of distress. Social anxiety is an intense fear of being judged or embarrassed in social situations. Think a kid who might struggle to go to a birthday party or feel a lot of anxiety before a social event. Panic disorder is an intense fear of having a panic attack in a particular situation. Sometimes how that looks is recurrent and unexpected panic attacks. Post-traumatic stress disorder is an anxiety disorder that's triggered by a traumatic event. Frequently with PTSD, you're having intrusive thoughts that are flooding your brain. It can be very challenging to deal with. Obsessive compulsive disorder is an anxiety disorder characterized by compulsive thoughts and repetitive behaviors. Specific phobias are phobias that are specific in nature. Think snakes, spiders, flying on an airplane, things like that. It's important to understand the different types of anxiety and how they can affect our lives. Knowing the signs and symptoms of each type can help us recognize as parents when our kids are feeling anxious and to look to seek help if needed. To recap, this mini course is not going to be a deep dive into particular types of anxiety. Rather, we're going to look at basic principles to get over the hurdle of anxiety. Anxiety is a common mental health issue that affects many people. It can be caused by a variety of factors, including genetics, lifestyle, and environment. In this lesson, we're going to explore the various causes of anxiety so that you can better understand the condition and how to manage it for your kid. Genetics can play a role of anxiety. Studies show that people with a family history of anxiety are more likely to experience it themselves. There was a recent study that highly anxious parents have a tendency to pass down their anxiety to their children. I want to look at this tendency and educate on ways to manage this tendency for parents. Additionally, lifestyle factors such as poor diet, lack of exercise, and substance abuse can all contribute to anxiety. I know this is obvious, right? Eating healthy and consistent exercise are generally going to help you feel better. I know this is not breaking news, but highly processed foods, sugar, caffeine are going to have an impact on your nervous system, which increases the tendency for anxious people to feel unsettled. Environmental factors, such as living in a stressful environment, can also increase the risk of developing anxiety. So I'm thinking of a few areas here. Areas with high crime population, schools that are poorly run, homes with a high level of conflict and instability. But the opposite is not always true. You can have a child who lives in a low crime neighborhood in a great school with highly consistent and stable parents and still have a child who struggles to manage anxiety. Let's keep this in mind. Finally, traumatic events such as the death of a loved one or a natural disaster can lead to anxiety. Our world is full of these situations daily. It seems there is a school shooting, natural disaster, war in the news cycle each day. Here's the thing, the news cycle does not always capture the lasting damage of trauma after the cameras are off, the interviews are done, and the day-to-day picks back up. Trauma is a present experience of past situations. So for many people, trauma is an ongoing experience they carry with them in their lives. Anxiety is a complex condition that can be caused by a variety of factors. It is important to understand the various causes of anxiety in order to better manage it. With the right support, mindset, and treatment, it's possible to manage anxiety and help lead a healthy and fulfilling life for our kids. Let's look at some common ways anxiety manifests in our children's lives. It's important to be aware of the signs and symptoms of anxiety so that you can identify it in your child and take appropriate steps to manage it. Some of the most common signs and symptoms include feeling overwhelmed, difficulty concentrating, restlessness, irritability, difficulty sleeping, and physical symptoms such as headaches, sweating, nausea, and trembling. Feeling overwhelmed is when you find yourself saying, "This is too much. I can't do this anymore. I don't have what it takes." What happens a lot of the time is little to no action on what is needed to do to feel success. For instance, your child has a big project, there's been procrastination, and now it's do or die mode. Concentration, looping thoughts in your head about something vague or specific. The thoughts do not help, they just cycle and loop over and over and over. It ends up taking away from concentrating on more important tasks at hand. Restlessness, you just can't get comfortable. Nervous energy, constant motion, constant movement. But it is not all the time, it is when there is something coming up that creates the edginess. Irritability, being short tempered, quick to be annoyed, less patient than normal, heightened agitation, shutting down people quickly. Stop, quit, not now. Difficulty sleeping, we've all been there. But is this chronic? Constant challenges with getting a good night's rest. Body is not able to calm down, relax, get into a restful state. Physical symptoms. Sweating is the obvious, hands, armpits, etc. Everybody loves a good armpit sweat, right? Nausea is commonly missed as an anxiety symptom, but very commonly this is a thing. Diarrhea can be an anxiety symptom as well. The body can do weird things when you are hyped and worried. Other signs and symptoms can include avoiding certain activities or situations, difficulty making easy decisions, and feeling tense and on edge. Where do you want to go for dinner? Do you want to have a friend over? Do you want to sleep by yourself at night? What is going to be on the test? Whose house am I going to be at this weekend? These are questions that typically don't take a long time to answer, but for an anxious child might turn into a long, drawn out situation. It is important to be aware of the signs and symptoms of anxiety so that you can identify it in yourself or others and take appropriate steps to manage it. Here in this mini course, we're going to focus on specific steps to get a jump start in managing this. Let's get some tools moving forward on anxiety. It's a common issue for many children and can be difficult to understand. It can be hard for adults to know how to help kids who are anxious, but understanding the causes and symptoms can help. We have discussed the common causes. Let's review. It can have many causes. It can be caused by a traumatic experience, a difficult life event, even genetics. It can also be caused by a combination of these factors. Symptoms can include physical symptoms, headaches, stomach aches, sleeping, emotional symptoms, fear, worry, irritability. It's important to keep recognizing these symptoms and understand their causes in order to keep helping our kids move forward. Kids need to know that things can get better. Say it with me. Things can get better. There is very strong research that supports this conclusion. With the right support and guidance, children can learn to cope with their anxiety and lead healthy, happy lives. It is also important for parents to work with your child. Help your child understand that you want to understand how this impacts them. I frequently hear kids tell me, my mom or dad just don't get me. They don't understand me. Let's help kids dispel this thought. Let's understand it, but then build a mindset for our kids that takes specific action steps to tackle it so things can get better. Create a mindset for your family. Are you buying into the idea that your child or teen cannot do this? I'm going to give some advice on managing this and checking yourself. I think I can. I think I can. It is easy to buy into thinking that is more comfortable and less challenging. And to be honest, this usually comes with some benefits. There might be less meltdowns, less stress, more quote unquote harmony, at least for a while. The old saying goes, they will grow out of it. But you may be watching this and realizing your kid is not growing out of it. It is getting worse, more severe by the day or the week. Day to day life is becoming more difficult. So, what do? You may start thinking that your kid actually cannot do the task. There are countless examples of this, but it is a safer and more comfortable way to think about it. John is just not ready. Abby has anxiety. It becomes a defining identity in how you see your kid. But what actually is anxiety? Is it a treatable condition or something that defines a person's identity? The APA says anxiety refers to the anticipation of a future concern and is more associated with muscle tension and avoidance behavior. I am not saying anxiety is not real. I'm not saying your child is faking it. I'm not saying that you are not trying as a parent, but think about it like this. Our kids are picking up cues from us as parents. They are learning how to think about the problem solving and managing stress from how we as parents are framing it. So we have to create a mindset for our kids that they can do this, even when they are saying they cannot. Again, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. What approach sounds more likely to build confidence? A. Billy is my anxious child. He cannot order food. He won't try new things. He won't go into the school building. He will not try and meet new friends. Or B. Billy is continuing to build confidence in many areas. We are working on developing ideas to try new things. Billy is an overcomer. He feels things big but refuses to give up. Keep working on the big picture mindset with your kid. Again, this is in the context of what a child is developmentally able to do. Is your own anxiety or lack of confidence impacting your approach? Is this particular challenge that your kid is going through something that you dealt with growing up that maybe you are believing your kid cannot do? Let me ask you this. Before you ask your kid to conquer a fear, have you conquered the same fear? Your children need these fears modeled to them in a way to where they can see success. They need to see that someone has gone before them and done the task at hand. Personal success stories are always going to be helpful about how you overcame a situation or scenario of your own. Help them believe they can conquer the task at hand. Of course, if this is not a typical or appropriate task for them to do not give them the task. I hear parents often say, and I'll use the example of ordering food, I could never do that as a child. We as parents sometimes accept a limitation based on our experience, whereas the challenge for our kid is doable. So, in summary, start with your mindset and check yourself. Now, let's get into some actionable steps moving forward. There's constant discussion about the diagnosis, especially with the rise of TikTok, Instagram, social media sites, etc. But the tricky thing with this is the following. Diagnosis, at times, leads to this idea that there cannot be movement, and this is a false construct. Diagnosis, generalized anxiety, social anxiety, specific phobias, etc., are descriptive labels that give a person more understanding on how to overcome the situation at hand. Diagnosis should not lead to a person saying, I cannot. While I use diagnosis every day in my practice, I do not emphasize the problem. Let's work to help find solutions to the problem at hand. This goes back to how we are thinking about the problem. Parents, let's focus on specific language that is going to help our kid build problem-solving mindsets. The work of James Clear is excellent. His book, Atomic Habits, has been on the bestseller list for the last several years. His idea around the 2-minute start is a very helpful idea that I think can be incorporated to build some competency, which means I can do this in confidence. I've done this and will keep doing this. Here's the idea. Any new habit must replace an older habit. With anxiety, we get used to saying no to the challenge at hand. So the goal is to work to build new pathways to our brain that is saying yes more frequently. Sometimes when we ask kids to start a new challenge, the immediate response is, that's too big, no way, Jose, not doing it, nope, etc., etc. We've all heard it. I think it can be helpful to look at anxiety from this lens of habitually saying no to something that they can do, so we can learn for them to start saying yes. So the idea here is to start small, make small steps, and start saying yes in smaller increments. James Clear discusses the 2-minute rule in this chapter in Atomic Habits, that new habits can be formed while getting it done in under 2 minutes. We want kids to get a sense in their growing and developing brains that they can do this. Let's put our kids in the best position to start. In other words, let's start small and easy. Let's make sure the kids are buying into the process. Are they committed? It is harder if parents are more invested in the goal than the child. If they are not invested, how do we break it down to where they can feel they can get a win? All right, we're in the teamwork module. So let's figure out how we work together as a team. First of all, let's make a plan specific and actionable. Let's create a team identity to conquer this problem. How are we going to work together to solve the problem at hand? Ask your child how you can help support them to solve the problem. And then let's create some steps that work for where your kid is currently at, not where you wish they were at, where they are actually at. So if we're at ground zero, let's get to level 1. Do not push for level 5 if your kid is at level 2. You feel me? Lots of encouragement with each step they are accomplishing. Focus on the process, less on the outcome. Let's take any specific anxiety situation and break it down into steps. We want to identify the goal we are working on. Is this goal a SMART goal? Most trace the SMART acronym back to a 1981 paper by George Duran. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So let me give an example. Let's say the challenge is your kid struggling to stay in his bed at night. So let's make a plan for that. The specific part of that, let's work to stay in bed for the whole night. And then the measurable part is the indicator of progress we're looking at. Or how do we know we're making progress? For instance, can they get to 10 minutes on their own or an hour on their own or get through half the night without getting out of their bed? What is that indicator of progress? That's the measurable part. The attainable is the idea, are they ready for this goal? Is this an attainable goal? If it is not attainable, let's break it down into smaller chunks and get some momentum going. Realistic. Are most kids able to accomplish this task? Or is it unrealistic at this point? And then time bound. When is the result going to be achieved? My suggestion is that you make a goal for 1 week at a time. At the end of each weekend, reassess and see how the progress has been going. Do you need to modify the specific goal? Was it too easy or maybe too difficult? Spend 10 or 15 minutes at the end of every weekend assessing this with your child, focusing on the idea of teamwork. And then be a partner with your child on the goal you're working on. Focus on the process, less on the outcome. I found in working with some families, positive incentives can be a strong motivator. For others, it's more of an intrinsic happiness that comes from completing the challenge. Now, if your child is stalling, this is a sign that one of the 5 indicators of the goal is not accurate. So you go back to the drawing board. Have fun, work as a team. Anxiety can be a difficult emotion to manage. It can be hard to know how to cope with anxious feelings and thoughts, especially for kids. In this lesson, we will explore different coping skills that can help individuals manage their anxiety. There are many different skills that can help individuals learn to deal with this. These skills can be broken down into 3 main categories: physical, cognitive, and emotional. Physical coping skills involve engaging in physical activities, exercise, yoga, running, deep breathing, football, basketball, you name it. Cognitive coping skills involve reframing negative thoughts and challenging irrational beliefs, learning to push back on the ant pile of your brain that gets riled up. Emotional coping skills involve expressing and managing emotions in healthy ways, such as journaling, talking to a trusted friend, etc. It is important to find coping skills that work best for your child. You might even want to use different words than coping skills. Everyone has different needs and different approaches that work for them. Experiment with different ways to find the ones that work best for you. Here's a sampling of resources that I have seen be effective for the pediatric population in my work. Distraction, exercise, deep breathing, positive self-talk, friendship support, family support, prayer, community, journaling, many others. Here's the takeaway. There are a lot of ways to manage this, but you got to focus on the buy-in to this idea. Parents, you can help teach coping skills. You don't need to pay someone to do this, though you can. See yourself as part of the solution to this challenge. Encouraging positive thinking is one of the most effective ways to help manage anxiety. In this lesson, we're going to discuss how to use positive thinking to help reduce it. I prefer the term constructive thinking. I'm not looking for Pollyanna solutions here. Life is hard. There are legitimate reasons why people feel anxiety in today's world. But how do we reframe this so it is not eating up daily joy and life satisfaction? The first step to using positive thinking to reduce anxiety is to recognize the negative thoughts that are causing the anxiety. Once these thoughts are identified, it is important to challenge them. Ask yourself if the thought is true or if it is just a fear. Learn to push back. If it's an unrealistic fear, then it is important to replace it with a positive thought. For example, if your child has a fear of failing a test, replace it with the thought of success. Help your child visualize them doing really well on the exam. Focus on the effort that your child put into studying, preparing, learning the material. If your child did not study or work hard, help them understand it makes sense for them to feel more anxious. Then focus on an action plan for future tests. What's the process going to be? How are you going to tackle this next time? Focus less on their fear, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail the test, and more on the process behind it. This will be a constructive tool to help your child get over the hump of anxiety. Mindfulness, another constructive strategy to consider. Focusing on the present, your senses. One tool I've used is 5-4-3-2-1. We could use that for shapes. Identify 5 squares, 4 circles, 3 triangles in the room that you're sitting in. Uh, that helps someone feel grounded to where they're at, feeling less overwhelmed, less panicked in the moment. Finally, it is important to practice gratitude. How do we shift out of the hyper focus of the present worry and remember all the gifts and blessings in our lives? So, learning the art of gratitude is another helpful strategy to get over the hump of anxiety. Should you discipline your child when they are having anxiety? Predetermine what the consequence will be for moral errors, allowing your kiddo to experience the sting of their actions, but also helping your child learn to own their failures in a way that teaches them honesty and integrity. Here's my thought. Poor discipline techniques happen for a variety of reasons. One of the more common reasons is when a parent is triggered by a fear of what their child might become. So something small that happens, a stolen piece of bubble gum, a white lie, gets magnified to a much higher degree due to the fear of the parent. So when the child feels scared, the corresponding action balloons into something that is not reasonable or effective. Large-scale threats that do not correspond to the error of the child will happen from the parent due to the parent's own trigger or fear. Take, for instance, a teenager who is struggling to get his grades done. The topic around grades quickly becomes how the 14-year-old is not going to have a successful business career. This approach is ineffective for a variety of reasons. Your kid will naturally learn to cover up their worries due to significant fear of major pushback, or they will emotionally react in such a big way it avoids the actual ability to solve the problem. Neither solution works. It then becomes a vicious cycle where kids and parents do not trust each other. So how do we break this cycle? For parents who tend to say things they later regret or make threats about the kid's life, having structure and predictability for your child or adolescents will help. I believe a child is more likely to buy into the plan if they are not overwhelmed or frightened by unrealistic consequences. Parent, stay calm when your trigger happens. Work through your own feelings and remind yourself of your role as a parent. Remember that your child is looking to you for guidance, support, and emotional consistency. So work to be consistent in your approach. Check yourself before the situation arises. Ask yourself afterwards if this was a way you wanted to handle it. Try not to be harsh, overbearing, or irrational. Remain calm and appropriate as much as you can with your words and your body language. And help them link cause and effect so they may learn from the situation. Look, I get it. Even as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking these are all ideal scenarios. These are all easier said than done. But truly, practice over time, children are more likely to confide in you and trust you for the situations that are coming up. So the long answer to the question about discipline, continue to work as a team, and the need for consequences around meltdowns, irritability, and poor behavior will decrease over time. Our third major point, sometimes families need to consider helpers. Sometimes our kid needs a fresh voice, a different perspective to say something that you are already saying, but in a different way. So let's look at what that looks like. positive mentors, faith leaders, licensed counselors, coaches, teachers, all can lend their ear. Depending on age and stage, it may work better for some kids than others. As a licensed counselor, I've worked with hundreds of families over the past decade and find that some kids respond to therapeutic measures more effective than others. There are many other strategies than just therapy. Coaches, faith leaders, extended family members, and mentors can all play a significant role in getting your kid moving again. Anxiety is a common mental health issue that can affect a child's mental health, leading to feelings of fear, worry, and distress. Fortunately, there are a variety of treatments available to help kids manage their anxiety. In this lesson, we're going to discuss the different types of treatment available. The most common treatment for anxiety includes CBT, exposure therapy, and medicine. CBT is the type of psychotherapy that focuses on changing negative thought patterns and behaviors. It helps individuals identify and challenge their negative thoughts, as well as develop coping strategies to manage their anxiety. With kids, it's especially important that they're buying into the process of therapy. Exposure therapy is another type of psychotherapy that involves gradually exposing an individual to the source of their anxiety. This helps individuals learn to manage it in a safe and controlled environment, step by step. ERP, or exposure and response prevention, is the gold standard care for OCD and OCD-related disorders. Supportive talk therapy is generally less effective for OCD, believe it or not. ERP is shown over time in research to be the most effective care specifically for obsessive compulsive disorder. Finally, medications can be considered. This would need to be in consultation with your pediatrician or a highly trained child and adolescent psychiatrist. Anxiety can be a difficult condition to manage. I do believe finding the right fit as a therapist is really important for your kid. Not every therapist is going to be the right fit for every kid and vice versa. It is important for a parent to speak with a mental health professional to determine the best treatment plan for your kid's needs. Sometimes setting up a consult and determining a course of action can be an action step in and of itself. I've had parents tell me that when they have set up the meeting and told their kid, hey, we have a meeting coming up, their anxiety symptoms actually go down because the kid's feeling hopeful. There are many benefits to seeking professional help for anxiety. A professional can provide you with an accurate diagnosis, a personalized treatment plan, very specific and fine-tuned coping strategies and techniques. They're going to have a wealth of experience to look at and help you manage your kid's anxiety. And then they can provide you, the parent, with support and guidance as you work through their anxiety and possibly your own in this process. Seeking professional help can be a difficult step to take, but it can be incredibly beneficial. With the right professional, you can receive an accurate diagnosis and get some steps moving. You can also learn a way to build coping strategies and receive support and guidance as you work through your child's anxiety. Anxiety is a natural response to stress and can be beneficial in certain situations. However, when anxiety becomes excessive, it can interfere with daily life and cause distress. We looked at ways parents can help their kids manage the daily ups and downs with distress. Continue work in helping your child build confidence and strengthening their own mindset. Don't let them give up. Keep them moving forward. This is treatable and can get better. Focus on the mindset around the challenge. Encourage buy-in. If your child is not buying in, find something they will buy in on. Develop SMART goals that will help them reach their competency. If needed, give them additional helpers to get them to the place where they need to be. Have fun in the process. All right, we're wrapping up for this lesson. I hope this mini lesson on rethinking anxiety has helped. Feel free to browse and take a look at some of my other content on my site. I plan on continually updating with fresh takes on mental health. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. friends, Jared Hood here. I'm a counselor, coach, and content creator. This is Ask Jared, Episode 1. Can anxiety improve? Anxiety is a treatable condition. It is a term used when your day-to-day life suffers due to distress each day. Anxiety can improve. There has been consistent research showing anxiety symptoms improving with a wide variety of treatment. Let me give a few. Exercise and vigorous activity, eating healthier, less sugar, less caffeine, strengthen your faith in God, supportive community in your life, positive self-talk, educating yourself and building your tool set, guided exposure therapy, and supportive counseling. Don't give up, stay hopeful. This Ask Jared segment is where I'm going to take questions around topics that could be helpful in day-to-day life. Leave questions in the comment sections below and I may focus on your question in a future video. If you found this helpful, hit like and subscribe.